As I'm sure you know, AI used to be terrible at making slides in a corporate or consulting style, but things have just changed massively with the release of Claude for PowerPoint. So in this video, I'm going to show you my exact workflow for how I use Claude for PowerPoint to create slides just like McKinsey and other top consulting firms. Now you might have previously tried PowerPoint's Copilot AI and you probably experienced something like this. So I'll open up Copilot and I'll give it an insight with some supporting data. Now, this example shows the growth of global e-commerce from 2018 to 2023 and the composition by region in 2023. And we want Copilot to communicate those two things. So I'll paste the insight and the data into Copilot, and after about 15 seconds, it produces this. Now, if you were to create this in a corporate setting, you would get roasted. There's no chart on this slide, and I don't even think that Copilot can create charts. Plus, a lot of the data is actually in the speaker notes for some reason. The action title is basically non-existent, and I don't want to even talk about the design and the AI-generated image. So let's agree that this is simply not good enough for a corporate professional. But about a month ago, Anthropic launched the Claude for PowerPoint plugin, and that's been a massive improvement in how AI builds slides. Now, Claude for PowerPoint, it's an add-on that lives inside PowerPoint, and once it's installed, you just click on the icon and it appears in the side pane. To see how it compares to Copilot, I'm just going to give it the same prompt and ask it to build a slide. So I'll paste it in here and wait. So that took about 4 minutes and 50 seconds, so a lot longer than Copilot, but clearly a much better slide. It shows quantitative data on the slide body, and it shows decent, but I guess not ideal charts for the data. And actually the action title is quite good too, because at least it's trying to communicate the so what. But here's what it didn't do well. The layout doesn't correspond to a corporate slide, and it lacks kind of visual balance between the two columns. That color scheme's a bit strange, it's kind of all over the place, and it's also strange that there's two bullet points orphaned at the bottom of the slide. But no question, it's a step in the right direction, and it shows that Claude does understand the basics of slide building, and actually it has all the tools that we need to create good slides. So the question is this: can we teach Claude how to use those tools better and create slides like McKinsey? Let's see. Instead of relying on Claude to do all the thinking, like we just did, we can give it specific instructions and templates to use. Now, there are two different ways to do this. The first is by adding persistent instructions. These are instructions that it will remember across every conversation, but only within Claude for PowerPoint and not on Claude for web. And the second way we can do it is by creating a custom skill. Now, this is a reusable set of instructions that Claude follows whenever you tell it to. So these are uploaded on the Claude.ai website, and they're explicitly invoked during a conversation. Now, the reason it took me so long to get this video out is because I tried every combination of instructions and custom skills to make this work, and after literally 5 days of iterating, I finally figured it out. So here's the architecture that I landed on, and it's a combination of custom skills and persistent instructions. There's a skill.md, which is the master file that gives Claude a step-by-step workflow for building presentations. This then references two additional sets of instructions. Chart types.md has decision logic for how to select the most appropriate chart for the data. Slide layouts.md has the decision logic for choosing the most appropriate slide layout for the insight. And I also have a slide templates PowerPoint pack that contains templates specifically customized to be used for Claude. And in addition, I've also created persistent instructions that are specifically focused on styling and design. I won't go through all of the reasons why I landed on this particular architecture, but the short answer is that you can't just chuck everything into a single skill file because Claude just seems to forget things and skip things. If you want, you can create your own skill too. So just click the plus icon down here, then skills, then manage skills. And this will take you to the Claude web skills section, and here you can create the skill. If you're going to do that, my main piece of advice is include workflows and processes in the skill and rules in the persistent instructions. The other option is to use this pre-built skill that I put together, and I've bundled that with my business strategy and consulting template pack. So in there, you'll get a single package that you upload via the Claude website and a set of persistent instructions that you paste into the Claude PowerPoint prompt, and then you're good to go. So I'll put a link to that in the description below. So anyway, let's see how close Claude can get to building a McKinsey style slide. This is the real test. So to use the skill, just open Claude for PowerPoint and simply write / and then the skill name. So in our case, it's insight to slide. Then you just share the detail. And for my skill, I need to share an insight and the supporting data in comma separator format. So to test the skill, we're going to use the same prompt that we gave Copilot and the vanilla version of Claude, so we can compare the outputs like for like. So here we go, I'll paste it in and hit enter. And by the way, as part of the skill, I've actually instructed Claude to share its thinking and ask for confirmation between each step. The idea here is to identify any issues before you've wasted 5 minutes waiting for the slide to get built, and also it allows you to provide additional guidance and personal preferences at the beginning of the process. So first, it analyzes the data and proposes the most appropriate charts. And for our data, it proposes two charts, a line and a stacked column chart. And this is based on the decision logic that I defined in the skill. As part of this step, it also compares the insight with the data to understand whether any data on the slide needs to be highlighted. So for our example, the insight talks about Asia Pacific as a category. And because of this, Claude suggests using highlighted coloring to make Asia Pacific clearer on the chart. And we're happy with this, so we'll just say yes. Then second, it asks whether we want to include text explanations alongside the chart. And if we do, Claude can generate them based on the data it has, or we can provide the text ourselves. But in this case, we're not going to include any text. And third, based on what we just told it, Claude will select the most appropriate slide layout for our insight. And in this case, it wants to use a two-chart layout with no text panel, and we'll say yes again. Once that's done, it'll go off and build the slide. And as it does this, it will read the workflows and the rules, both in the skill and the persistent instructions. And for our example, it took about 5 minutes and 5 seconds. So actually about the same time as building the chart without our skill. And as you can see, the slide looks surprisingly good. It matched the design from my business strategy and consulting template pack. It selected the best slide layout. It picked the right charts. It populated all of the text fields, including the action title. And it's even got the small things right, like it's used a highlight color for the two groups that make up Asia Pacific. This is clearly better than what Claude can do on its own, and in my opinion, it looks just like a slide from McKinsey or another top consulting firm. And I reckon this slide might even pass review without too many changes. But if you do want to make changes, you just ask Claude. So in my case, I asked it to remove the bolding from the data labels and increase the font size of the legend, and it just gave me this. But there are some additional changes that I want to make that are a little bit harder, and for these, I'll do them myself. So for example, the first chart is communicating a growth rate, so it should have a CAGR arrow like this, and the action title talks about Asia Pacific as a category, but the second chart splits that into China and Asia Pacific ex-China, so they need an aggregation annotation like this. By the way, I tried for hours to teach Claude how to create CAGR arrows and aggregations, but nothing I did quite worked, and I think it's because they don't exist as part of a chart and it couldn't quite align things properly. But that aside, I think it's created, honestly, an amazing slide that could easily be mistaken for something from a top consulting firm. Plus, it significantly shortcuts the slide building process, and having to make small tweaks at the end of a finished slide is still significantly better than building the slide from scratch. But the big caveat here, of course, is that I spent many days upfront designing and building this insight to slide skill. It took a lot of work, a lot of iteration, a lot of trial and error, but once you have that, Claude for PowerPoint works very well. But the real test is going to be whether Claude for PowerPoint can actually understand and synthesize the insights from the raw data. So let's ask it to do that now. So this time we're going to give Claude this prompt, which contains a different insight. And based on this insight, we want Claude to show that online sales now account for the majority of revenue in our data set. So I'll paste this into the prompt and let's see what Claude analyzes and sees. So as you can see, Claude has noted that my skill originally indicated to use a stacked area chart, but because there are only 3 periods, it's decided to propose using a single 100% column chart. It's also identified some data that it should highlight, and all of that is fine. Now this time we're going to ask Claude to include some insights alongside the charts, and I'm not going to give it any more data, it's just going to have to synthesize the raw data itself. And finally, we'll confirm that the slide layout is fine, and off we go. So this time it took just over 6 minutes to create the slide, and it actually ran into a small error that it self-corrected, so that's why it took a little bit longer, but this is the slide that it produced. And again, it looks really good, just like a slide from McKinsey or another consulting firm. And again, I think this slide might pass review first time. But most importantly, let's check whether Claude has synthesized the data correctly. Online channels surpassed in-store for the first time in 2024, correct? Mobile is the fastest growing channel at plus 13 percentage points over 2 years, correct? And phone/catalog is in rapid decline from 15% to 5%, correct? And to be fair, you might want to tweak some of these insights, but clearly Claude does understand what the data is saying. But to be intellectually honest, here's what I would change on this slide. Claude has done a good job at highlighting the 2 online channels in red, and These reflect the main insight in the action title, which is that online sales account for the majority of revenue. However, it would be more logical to also group the offline channels and not have them split, so I would reorder the series here like this. I would then probably include aggregation annotations like this, so the reader didn't have to do the mental math to understand that online is greater than 50%. And then finally, for stacked column charts over time, it's typically best practice to include connectors like this. But again, the slide is like 95% of the way there, and these are just the finishing touches. It's so easy to forget that Claude for PowerPoint is still in beta and will only improve from here, but even now, it's completely usable for creating corporate slides using custom skills and persistent instructions. And as I said, there's a link below if you want to use the one that I created. The awesome thing about AI tools like Claude for PowerPoint is that you can use them in so many different ways. And I have some really cool ideas for additional use cases outside of just creating slides. That'll be my next video, so subscribe and hit the notification bell to hear about that. Or if I've already published it, it'll appear on screen now.